No trains to Carlisle today. Engineering works on the West Coast mainline, part of a long-running 9 weekends saga. Signalling and lineside equipment are being renewed between the border and Carlisle, so ScotRail's Glasgow to Carlisle service is being terminated at Dumfries, and rail replacement coaches cover the final 35 miles. With calls at Annan and Gretna Green, the 37-minute rail journey becomes a 67-minute bus ride, traffic permitting. Services from the south to either Edinburgh or Glasgow are being terminated at Carlisle, and passengers transferred to road transport for the final 100 miles of their journey. Although my bus in from Dumfries was packed to the gunnels, the station seems fairly quiet. I suspect that LNER are probably doing rather well on the east coast, with long-distance travellers transferring to their route. Talking about LNER, their route learning train is standing in platform 1, waiting to depart for Heaton Depot, and it provides an interesting moment. The textbook procedure to warn a rail track worker. A two-tone horn, visually acknowledged by the man about to cross the track, and a single horn from the driver. We're each aware of the other.
This is a customer announcement for passengers just arriving on the anti-West Coast service from London Euston, arriving onto platform 4. Those passengers who intend to travel from the north to Locomotive, Motherwell, Glasgow Central or Waverley. As you will know by now, there is a bus replacement service in operation between Carlisle and these stations from the north. Please make your way into the bus queuing system on the concourse of platform 4 for these stations. Please select the appropriate queue for your station. Please do not attempt to access buses from the main exit to the station. The entrance door is barriered off to the buses just for road safety purposes to allow the buses to manoeuvre at the station front. A bus coordinator will assist you from the queue to your bus at the appropriate time. Passengers for Redknapp, Annan and Dumfries, please make your way from the station front, following the pedestrian route, past Costa Coffee, across the street at Gate, to the Crescent, Warwick Road, where the Referee, Annan and Dumfries Scotland replacement bus will arrive. Please make your way following that pedestrian route from the station front, approximately 150 to 200 yards from the station front. Thank you.
For most of the morning, the station is untypically quiet, but it's livened up for me by the arrival of a number of friends, both young and old, some of whom I haven't seen for over a year. It's not me they're here to see, however, but a very special visitor. 60163 Tornado is due to arrive, with the West Yorkshireman from Bradford Foster Square. We haven't seen that locomotive in Carlisle for a long time. At the moment, the weather is unpredictable, so I resist the urge to use the drone and try to follow the charter train's approach. The crowds around Tornado mean it isn't worthwhile even trying to get close. With the through roads required for stabling long-distance trains unable to proceed north, the signalmen get the charter train away to Upperby Yard very smartly. She'll stay there as long as possible this afternoon. Her passengers are scheduled to be in the border city for 3¼ hours. The second route learning train of the day sits in platform 1 for a 53-minute stopover. Whilst a train from Manchester Airport sits over for 20 minutes in the adjacent platform 3 before returning, but only as far as Manchester's Piccadilly station. The weather seems to have settled, and I decide to gamble on aerial filming. The Azuma is scheduled to leave at 15:22 for Doncaster, not Tyneside, and I should have time to get set up at an outside spot and film its departure from the air. Unfortunately, it leaves 5 minutes ahead of time, and I'm still setting up the drone as it passes. Also, unfortunately, that wind is much stronger than I had realized. I will fly the drone, but will have to keep it more or less overhead. If I try to follow a train in these conditions, I might never see the poor drone again. The West Yorkshireman has been serviced and watered at Upperby Yard, and after being reversed using the London Road loop, it is being held at the lights at London Road Junction waiting for the London-bound Pendolino to clear its approach road to the Citadel. This engineer's train started its journey at Carlisle Junction, immediately north of Citadel Station, presumably the site of the signalling replacement work, and is heading for Crewe's Baseford Hall Yard. Tornado sits in platform 3, making it very obvious that she's more than ready for the long climb ahead over Shap. Arthur Peppercorn designed the A1 class Pacifics, not to be confused with Nigel Gressley's class A1, whose most famous member was Flying Scotsman, and which were mostly rebuilt as A3s, for the LNER, but all were actually built by British Railways after nationalisation. 49 locomotives were built, but none were preserved. Tornado is a rebuild dating from 2008. As a class, the engines were powerful and enjoyed a reputation for reliability. I was a boy in Darlington in the 1940s and 50s, and I'm quite sure that the only chime whistles I ever heard were the Gressley A4s. The Peppercorn A1s were magnificent machines, but they certainly didn't have chime whistles. The wind is becoming quite ferocious, and the drone is struggling to hold its position. Will I have to land it before the train moves? Tornado and the West Yorkshireman head off home, and had it not been for that dangerously strong wind, I would have followed her down to Upperby Junction Bridge. However, the drone only weighs 249 grams, and it's quite frankly miraculous that it can hold its position in a wind such as today's, constantly adjusting its 4 tiny electric motors while communicating with 27 geostationary satellites to establish its position to within a matter of inches. Going back to when I was a boy in the steam age, this would have been beyond the wildest dreams of science fiction. By the time I packed my kit and returned to the Citadel, my friends had all disappeared. So, if they are watching this, it was great to see you again, a belated goodbye, and here's to the next time.